Hello ladies and gentlemen and welcome back to the channel, and today we're playing Civ 3 because I'm feeling a little burnt on WoW right now, and midnight is around the corner, so I can't really wait for that to come around and all that fun stuff. Now, if I do streams, I will definitely be doing that. But regardless, besides the point, welcome to Civ 3, and today we're playing Age of Imperialism, one of the best Civ 3 mods scenarios that I personally think is in the history of Civ 3, because it is a WW1 mod, which is quite unique in itself. But I play a lot of Hearts of Iron, and in turn, I was attached to it because of Age of Imperialism. Because being able to do some crazy, wonky stuff is always so fun. But regardless, we are playing as the German, so we will be playing Wilhelm II. Better than Wilhelm II, in my opinion. So essentially, what this mod is basically it's a total overhaul mod to make everything all based around 1895 to pretty much 1924, and it is quite literally. I think the end game goal or time, whatever, is 1930. I think something like that. So we are pretty much hard pressed. We have many ways to play this mod scenario. The one that I will be playing is Conquest. Now, Conquest means that I have to take a good chunk of the world. Now, the nation that is the closest to this ending is the British Empire. The one that is the furthest away is the Boer Republic, or Abyssinia, one of those African countries. But today we are playing as Germany, and we're going to play Conquest. Now, there is a supply support points, victory point system. I will not be doing. The AI does it by default, and it requires a lot. So they won't get close. They won't get close. But besides that, today's objective is to pretty much make Germany, Wilhelm's Germany, greater than it was before. So great that we don't need to have a national revolt to something that we is clearly not wanting to happen. So we're going to try to avoid the German humiliation period. So our goals right now is set. Our first goal is to build up and prepare to take Scandinavia. Yeah, pretty easy. Pretty simple. In fact, it's so simple that a child can do it. Crazy how that works, huh? Um, so our first objective is to take Scandinavia, and we need to build up a massive fleet. Now, Age of Imperialism does something that is absolutely awesome. And I mean that. Legitimately awesome. So, what I mean by awesome, I mean this. Navy is quite literally the center focus of this scenario, surprisingly. Not so much ground play. Like, land combat is obviously a big deal. However, it is not really the center focus of the mod. Quite literally, Navy is the name of the game. And with a powerful navy, you can pretty much win the scenario verbatim. Verbatim. Because if you are a minor nation, you could still win the game. You can still win the game as, Italy, Abyssinia, pretty much anything. China, even, can be beaten. The thing, though, is that Navy kind of plays a big role. Because all the cities have been settled, there is no need for expanding through settlers. Because everything that needs to be settled is settled. And culture will take its place. Conquest is the true center focus of the map. So, with that in mind, in true sense, the whole thing is literally proxy war after proxy war after proxy war. Now, that is the early game. Unfortunately for the late game, that's not really the general case. Um, no. So what I mean by this is that a real way to finish this game proper is to take, and that's it, just conquest. This whole game is just conquest. There is a diplomatic victory by creating the United Nations, which I think is all the way at the line at the final for this International League of Nations diplomatic victory. Conquest, diplomatic, and VP points is like the biggest only ways to win this scenario. And the reason why it's like that is because, um, well, obviously it's World War One. You don't need to be going into space. Sorry. Culture victory, very, very difficult. They turn that off because everybody has their own wonders, everybody has their own small wonders, everybody has their big wonders. You all fight for the big wonders, but all the small wonders take its place most of the time, which kind of makes things kind of boring and easily winnable. So El Justo says no culture victory. Um, so our biggest thing right now is to take Scandinavia. Here's another big thing too: China. China is big for imperial powers because there's two types of units. You have colonial units and you have your main units. Essentially, your colonial units are half-assed units, but they still provide quite a big deal to a lot of your industry and a lot of your things. And the real, honestly, the best way to handle a lot of it is through, well, being a colonial individual, a colonizer of sorts, and colonizing minor nations such as China and stuff like that is definitely a big, big play. And honestly, I hate to say it, but that's pretty much the name of the game is colonialization. And there will be a lot of people who do not like that, and that's fair. But I'm not talking about you this time around. I'm quite literally talking to the people who understand actual fucking history and to understand the pinpoint of the importance of such things and not to get ass hurt about it. But the whole flavor of the game is to pretty much be an asshole. That's in all fairness and honesty. That's just how it is. Um, you want to connect cities. You want to get resources going. You're gonna have a lot of issues in a few places, but all in all, it should not be too terribly difficult unless you're gonna have, well, a rough time. Um, we'll go ahead and get the Schutztruppe. What I should have done was take that naval unit out. Oopsie. Whatever. It's okay. China is actually one of the easiest big minor powers of sorts. They are a big power and could be considered imperial power, but unfortunately they do not possess, and I mean this sadly because I know there's a few people who like the Qing dynasty in my friend group, and as such, really like to see them prosper. Unfortunately, though, they do not have or possess the ability to do so. Now, China is, in all sense, a big, big late game behemoth. The problem, though, is that they don't have a navy to back that up, which is quite rough, to say the least. Very, very rough, to say the least. And it is quite sad, in my opinion. It is quite sad. Because I think there is quite a bit of potential, a potential for China in this. But the issue is that historically speaking, China does not have really any good naval power. I mean, you're not going to get the best outcomes, because the only thing that China can make is the generic stuff that is just given to everybody. Generic battleships, generic coastal defenders, generic submarines. You're not going to get anything good. Versus, like, what I will get. So, like, here's an example that I will pull up on screen. So, over here, Super Dreadnoughts 1. So, what China will get is this. Coastal battleship cannot sail in oceans. That's a big issue. A lot of the generic stuff cannot go through oceans very often. Well, not the big ships anyway. You see here it has 18 defense, which is technically attack, and bombardment is 12, and the operational range, which means instead of it being a tile like this, it is a tile that extends out. So it hits further inland if you want to, but the problem is that it's just like that. Now, here's what I will be getting, is the Baron class, which will have 46 attack, 33 defense, 6 ranged, and everything else. So there is some issues. There is some issues that if you're gonna have China give me a bunch of coastal battleships, my Baron class is gonna fucking eat them. That's just how it's gonna go. They're not good. They're not terrible. They're just not good. And you cannot mass those ships for outward conquest. Like, you cannot send those ships over to, say, Britain or France or Germany or America even, because you have to cross a vast ocean, which it's not going to be able to do. And that is a big, big, big issue. Needless to say. But, again, the units they will be getting in the late game is really, really worth it because they're really strong. The problem, though, is that it's just not enough to carry them to the end game. And that is a big, major issue for the most part because of that particular reason. And it is quite a shame, honestly, because I think they can do pretty damn good. Believe me, they can. It's not strong enough. To be honest, China is really just something that you eat early game because it gives you a lot of industrial power in Asia. If you play Portugal, you play Germany, you definitely want to eat China. If you're playing as Britain, you don't necessarily need to be hard pressed to eat China. If you play as Japan, definitely eat China. Japan has a unique thing, and I debated playing Japan in this game through instead of Germany. But the reason why I didn't was because I think Japan's too easy. And the reason for that is because Japan doesn't have colonial troops, because Meiji, Hirohito, a lot of those emperors during the day was very, very anti-imperialism when it comes to conquest and colonization. Because of this particular issue, that is not very an issue for them, is that a lot of the troops that they can build that are really, really decent, really, really good, don't require a colonization or industry, which is two different types of resources. Like, for example, here, you can see here colonialism and undermine colonialism, and that allows us to build colonial troops, like the Schutztruppe infantry, which is a colonial infantry unit. It has 8-8 versus the industrial power, Germany, where you can see here the German infantry, just the normal German infantry, is 10 attack, 10 defense. So obviously there is some nerfs, but it's still viable. And it's really, really what makes the difference and why a lot of things. So China wants me to agree to a peace deal that I'm not going to do. Why won't I do it? Because I am not done. I am just not done. I'm not done messing with them yet. So, Age of Imperialism, in short, is a really, really fun mod. It's really, really good. The best way to play this mod is to be aggressive early game and chill out late game. And what I mean by chill out late game, I mean like this. The best way to describe the late game is as such. The late game falls under everybody is already at war and everybody is going to be constantly at war. And I mean this genuinely, constantly at war. And it will be quite a pain in the ass to try to do anything because everybody will be just at war. When you hit your third slot, your third research era, whatever you want to call it, everybody, every turn, and I mean this, every turn, you're going to see somebody doing a peace deal and somebody declaring war. And it's just going to be a constant rotation of war, peace, war, peace, war, peace, war, peace, war, peace. And then what gets better is that you're going to have mutual agreements for defense, defense packs, which makes things so much better. Not really, but it's just that, oh, you declare war on this guy, good luck fighting 5 other of his friends type thing. It literally turns into a world war, a bigger world war than the real World War One. But regardless, it's still it's still gonna be a world war, which is the name of the game essentially. So when I mean you wanna push hard, fast, and loose, you want to make friends with nations that you know you're not going to be fighting, and you want to do war with nations that you are definitely going to be fighting. And the reason for that is pretty basic. It's just how it works. It's just how it works. You want to make alliances of conveniences, and you want to fight things of convenience. Wars of convenience, definitely do. Like, for example, if you're going to play as the Boers, for example, down here, you have 3 cities to work with. You want to wait for Britain to start fighting France or Germany because their navies will be completely bogged down. They're not going to likely be sending any troops to fight you because they'll be too busy fighting major powers that are going to be a bigger threat than you. So all you have to do is you just clean up South Africa and you move steadily north. Portugal is a pretty fundamentally weak nation. I hate to let the Portuguese down, but it's true. You guys are the weakest major power next to Italy. And you won't have a navy to back you up either. That's another big thing for Portugal is that you're not going to have some major ships or anything like that. You're going to have the generic stuff like China has and things. It's just not going to work out for you in the end. Same way with Spain. Your biggest rival as Portugal is Spain. If you can take China, hey, that's a big industry boost for you. But your major issue is going to be Spain. Because it's the closest neighbor you've got, and you're going to have to fight land wars because all your troops are all better land than sea. Which, gauging nations in this game by virtue of their naval power is pretty accurate because world wars are usually won with superior naval strength, not land strength. And that's just how it works, and that's just how it be. And it's the hard truth. And a lot of people can disagree, and trust me, do disagree. Because land wars do make a big difference in World War One. And make a big difference all around. But when you're bogged down in trench warfare and you can't really do anything, the best way you can get is more allies with superior arms and battle on land to make it to your borders. And if they can't make it through their borders because your enemy controls the sea, that's when things get a little rough. Now, the reason why my first goal is to really fight Scandinavia, take Scandinavia out, and to destroy China for a lot of imperial power, colonial power, is because the UK has this thing where the AI will try to blockade you early and without really recourse. Essentially, the AI is going to build this huge wall of ships that are going to block this whole way except up here. And that would be an easy way to get through. Now, obviously, the best option is to perhaps get all your outworld stuff done. Try to sneak a bunch of troops into to the UK and just demolish them from the inside out. That is a viable strategy, but it is not a long-term strategy. I'm afraid to say. It just isn't. In fact, it is one of the worst kind of plays that you can do because the AI will take notice of your duplicity and less likely to work with you if that is the case. So, Britain will definitely become a big contender of mine that I'm going to have to destroy eventually, as well as France. But that won't happen until the late game. Because, big things. Two big things. One, there are a horde nations in this game. In this scenario, France and Britain are hoarders. What do I mean by hoarders? Pretty simple. They will amount like 30 goddamn troops into one city, stacked up to where it's going to take you roughly 10-20 minutes to freaking take one city. That is just the worst of it all. Because they will just do that. And when they get the maximum machine guns, it becomes even more irritating. So the land war dissolves into essentially you having 7 cavalry, 10 infantry, and like 50 artillery units to try and blast out the city. To blast out the city. It's just how it's gonna work and how it be. It's just how it is. I've seen the late game. I have done the late game. I have won exactly one of these games because it has taken me roughly 20 hours, 40 hours to fucking do it. Which is pretty rough. Especially if you're going to try and do a YouTube series, because the late game is going to be so bogged down that you're going to have, like, episode 50 and making absolutely no progress. Who would have thought that a game about trench warfare would be this rough? It is. It is that rough. And, you'll guys will eventually see maybe of how irritating it can technically be in the late game. Now, gold in this map is no stranger. Believe me. Do not be afraid to hurry units to get them out in the field quicker. Do not be afraid of such actions because it is encouraged. Gold in Civ 3 is really nothing. Unlike gold in the other Civilization games, Civ 3, it really means nothing. The only reason why you want to get a bunch of gold is to stave off those stupid messages. Those dumbass messages that are like, oh, your treasury's low, your treasury's low. And it's like, yeah, you don't have to remind me 30 damn times a day. But reality also is that in Civ 3 you can upgrade units, and it is encouraged to upgrade units. But it's not the general center focus of things, so centerpiece of things, so it is by far very, very handy to have as much gold as you can carry. But Age of Imperialism, this mod is very, very decent. It is very, very good. I like it. There is a lot of good. There is a lot of bad. A lot of bad usually stems from one unit, and there's always going to be at least one unit that is not fully encoded in properly and destroys your game. And you don't know which one it is until you actually make it, or another civilization makes it for you. Yeah, so it is by far irritating. Another thing too Is that artillery carries the game? Yes. Should a map let artillery carry the map? Sure. Why not? But when your best units are cavalry units until you can get tank units, yeah, it's pretty standard. Yeah, it's pretty standard. It's pretty standard. Yeah, that's just a standard Civilization 3 game. Yep, yes it is. All right. We're slowly making progress. We're going to be producing a lot of cavalry units now because we have unlocked the cavalry. And the cavalry will be doing a lot of cleaning of the area here. When it comes to the reason why I do the things I do on here, and the way you see me play this, you're gonna find out pretty quickly why. Why am I doing this hard early? Why am I bullying lesser powers? Why am I destroying China? Throughout all of my explanations, you will find out pretty damn quick that it is easier to go to war with all these minor powers. As anybody, it can be Russia, it can be Britain, it can be France, it can be, a lot of things. It can be. The reason why is because I hate the point system. And what I mean by point system, I mean victory point system. You have to collect, I think, 500,000 points to win a victory through that. Which means a lot of pain, a lot of transportation, a lot of units having to carry these little boxes of raw materials to your capital. Some major powers like Germany will have a hard time doing such a thing because if you're not taking Scandinavia, you're not going to have pretty much anywhere to go for it. And let me tell you of how rough that is. Because when Britain is literally cock-blocking you the entire fucking game because you did not take Scandinavia, you're going to have to go to war with Britain. And going to war with Britain is a goddamn hassle and a half. And I mean this genuinely speaking. It is far more easier to just not do that. It is far more easier to just play the colonial game, where your sole focus is actually on everything else but Europe. Unless you have to defend in Europe. Defending in Europe is a lot easier than it seems because of those reasons. Artillery carries the game, as I've said, so does ships. Military is very static here, as you would imagine. And you won't get any tank units until a little bit in the late game. Which is fair to say because nobody considered tanks until later in the war. The problem is land ships. Land ships are really, really decent. 16.8. That's not bad. Don't use these on the coastline because they will be torn to shreds by every battleship in the goddamn game. So do not use those to take coastal cities. In fact, they become less artillery focused, more or less cavalry. Your cavalry is going to be switched out by land ships. Pretty simple, pretty basic, pretty understandable. But you'll understand pretty damn quick that the land ship bonuses are they're not great. They're not really great. They have pretty much the ability to ignore fortifications. What are fortifications? These little things here. They're trenches. Land ships can pretty much negate the defense bonuses here. Those are good. The problem, though, is cities. Not so good. You can't just make a land ship and expect it to work like a normal tank that you would see in your base game. That is going to just one-shot everything. No. Unfortunately, that's not how it works here. Land ships are cavalry. That's it. They are reskinned cavalry with a bunch of attack and defense. It is not the best. It is not the worst. Tanks are really good. But you're not going to mass produce them the same way you would with infantry and other types of things. You're going to have to play the long game with that, with them, unfortunately. Unfortunate, but true. Um, does this mean that you should not build tanks in this game? No, please build tanks in this game. Tanks definitely do help, but there should not be the center focus of your conquest. Do not just be like, oh, I've got tanks, I'm going to mass produce tanks because they'll carry the game. No, hoo hoo hoo. Your main focus is to mass produce artillery units. That's it. Artillery carries the game better than tanks carry the game. Should that be the case? I don't think so, but you know what? That's just how it works. Back then, tanks did not have any big shell outputs or anything like that, like you would see, in all the games that host those types of things, like Battlefield. But the thing is that tanks in this scenario use machine guns, so they're not going to be using shells to pretty much conquest everything. Just keep that in mind. Alright, let us push in deep. Now, here's some Norwegian troops. Now, Scandinavia, early game, is relatively easy to push around because of their differences. And I don't mean this rude. They can make Finnish troops, they can make Danish troops, they can make Norwegian troops, and they can make Swedish troops. And they're all relatively the same. It's just that some are better at defense while others are good at offense. I thought about doing a Scandinavia game for this series because, honestly, I think it's fun. And I've done it before. But I will not be making this series very long. In fact, we have pretty much reached the end of the episode, because I am going to keep this here as a half-hour thing, or at least a little over it. So, thank you guys for watching. In the next episode, we will be taking the rest of Scandinavia, and we're going to see if we can take the rest of China. We should be able to. This game's relatively easy for me, but, it is what it is. Conquest is conquest. And until the next time, my friends, peace out.